Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ventures, a show where my guests and I get to explore entrepreneurial stories, market landscapes, problem spaces, and examine together how new ventures might be able to be created, either for-profit, nonprofit, or personal ventures, to benefit humanity. Really, the purpose of this show is to educate and inspire a new generation of venture builders, venture investors, to make the world a better place. In today's episode, my guest is Shandel Sutherland, and she is one of my favorite people in the world. And she has been a coach of executives and their teams and their businesses for over 20 years now. And in this conversation, we walk through a wide range of topics, including how to identify blind spots in yourself as an executive, as a founder, how to establish effective communication rhythms with your team, how to establish trust and work your way up from there to get the operational efficiency that you need in order to make your startup or your growing business successful. And I talk a lot about how founder conflict often leads to inefficiencies that will ultimately kill a business. I mean, everybody cites something like we ran out of money or competition killed us or something like that as a reason why startups fail. But really, they fail, in my experience, because of some kind of miscommunication breakdown, trust breakdown, and dysfunction of a team that ultimately kills the business. So I'm excited to share this episode with you. If you are watching, you can listen anywhere that you get your podcasts. You can just search for Ventures. And if you're listening, you can also watch this episode by visiting wclittle.com. And there you'll also see links to more extensive show notes for all the different resources that we talk about today. So with that, please enjoy this conversation with Shandel Sutherland. All right, Shandel, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So great to be here with you, Will. You're one of my favorite people to hang out with.
Likewise, I'm honored. So why don't you start, if you're willing, tell us a little bit about your background and go as far back as you think appropriate.
Well, it was, okay, I'll start with August 17th, 2000 at 2 p.m. How's that?
Oh, okay.
Because I was in New York City, Times Square, Marriott Hotel, attending a workshop. And it was, I was attending as an entrepreneur it was called the Young Entrepreneurs Organization. And they were telling us as entrepreneurs why we needed a coach. And I sat there and went, I do this every day of my life. What is this? And so I went to it again. You know how they repeat them? I went again. And afterwards I went down and told the guy, I'm like, I got to do this. And I signed up. And it was on that day that I knew this was my calling. This is what I was supposed to do. And I have been doing it ever since. Within a week, I was getting schooling. And in 2 weeks, I was coaching people pro bono, not knowing what in the heck I was doing. And that's where I started, right then, right there. And it's been just an incredible ride. So 20 years been doing this thing. Started when I was a kid.
Oh, wow. So what were you doing at the time that made you convicted that you needed coaching?
Yeah, well, I didn't actually know about coaching. So when I went, I knew that I have got to do coaching because I didn't even know about it. So it was interesting because my entire career has been about telling people what coaching was. I mean, the first part of my career. Then coaching now is like a thing. But back then I had to explain to people what coaching was.
So it's 2000.
Yep.
You go to this conference. You discover this is your calling. Then you got to start a business. So let's talk about that. Like, people listening in are entrepreneurs, early stage investors. We've kind of been around this and people are curious about just that process of starting a business. So take us back.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you what it looked like. Thank the Lord I was single because it worked that I did both my jobs and then I did classes and then I did marketing and pro bono. So I worked at night. I got up at 6 a.m. I worked on my lunch hour on my side job. So I was definitely a bootstrapper from the beginning. And I didn't have any money saved up and I wasn't borrowing money because I was definitely a debt-free girl. So I basically had to do moonlighting and until I could then get rid of one job. And now I have one job and I just kept getting rid of jobs until I took that scary leap of faith years later. And I always tell people, like, it takes 3 years, is like the statistic. And that was really true for me, if not a little bit more when you do it on your own. So I have been loving the process of it. And that's what I always tell people. So it's fun. Yeah, it was hard. It's hard work,
So
but I loved it.
when you were landing those first handful of customers and trying to convince it sounds like you're educating them on just what is coaching in general, and you're convincing them to hand over money, you're basically forming your product, right? It's your service that you're selling. How did you position yourself back then? What was the value proposition?
Well, I had a group of, so back in the day, YEO was you were under the age of 38, have started your company, making $1 million or more. So there wasn't a whole lot of people doing that. It was far and few between, but they were gunners. And so I was in my young 30s or just 30. So I was also in that kind of growth mode. And so I think I was just with people talking to them about, hey, what is it that you want to do next? And I was a very good question asker. As and hopefully I'm getting even better at that as the days go by. And then giving my experience, like, well, do you think this is really where this is headed? Is this going to get you where you want to go? And they'd be like, well, I don't know. And so what I was seeing is that a lot of these people were, they made $1 million on the top line, but their marriages were falling apart. They were a disaster because I luckily wasn't married, but I knew how much energy and it was taking for me to grow my business. And so I had to really invest that and bring it out of them like, hey, you got to keep your priorities right. And sure enough, in one decade, I think I went to 2 marriages of one entrepreneur or 2 weddings of one entrepreneur and helped them through the divorce, so I saw it all really young and I just had a heart for that. I'm like, this cannot keep happening. This is not, and my dad, I think that my experience and why I was so passionate about this is my dad was an entrepreneur and his marriage didn't last. And I saw but then I saw what happens after you marry the mistress. And I saw the next 20 years of misery. And so I think for me, one, I was the victim of an entrepreneur who just got over their skis. And I was a victim of that, where everyone doesn't really consider the children victims, as well as my friends. And we had all now had 20 years of being children of divorce. And then our fathers were all miserable men in their midlife. And I'm like, listen, I'll tell you how this thing goes. And so I actually helped a lot of people with my story and my friends' stories. So it was powerful back then.
Wow. So that journey then of working with the handful of entrepreneurs, and those listening in and watching, I think are probably nodding their heads, because this is the tricky part of entrepreneurship that does not get talked about a lot. There's kind of this mode of, hey, you gotta suck it up and you gotta hustle and you gotta fake it till you make it. Well, if you
want to go there, I got a real dinger for you. Ready for the zinger?
Yeah.
This is also what I saw so this is the experience I give to entrepreneurs as well, is that, and this came from my early days of working with the gunners back then, is they grow fast, right? So they're in organizations, they're getting coaching, they're in what's called forums, like they're growing personally and their life is changing fast, right? Because before they were just like they were a worker and they were just really good at it and had a really good idea. And now they're running this fast machine and the pressure on them is huge. They got to keep up. They got to make people happy. And usually we marry our opposite. And so they're usually like me, the fast-paced extrovert. They are getting all their needs met at work. And then their person who is their balancer, right, is steady, is not growing as fast as they are, has a lot of fear because it's their counterbalance, right? And while they're taking risks, their spouse or partner doesn't want them to take those risks. It's scary for them. So what I also found is that there was a lot of divorce because there wasn't investment in the home like it was in work. And then again, they'd go find someone that wanted to be like them, and that rarely lasted over 3 to 4 years. So I really, and being in it for 10 years, what I saw is those beautiful, in my case, it was, men I was working with. Those sweet women just put up with it, didn't say a word. They would say a lot of things, but the entrepreneur didn't hurt it.
Mm.
And man, I had to deal with some shattered men because they didn't hear it for 10 years that their wives were burning out and
Mm.
they weren't coming back. Like once those women, they're steady eddies. And once they made a decision they were out, there was no bringing them back. And so, it grieves me. So those kind of experiences then makes me extremely passionate about not only the entrepreneur, but also what's happening on their teams, right? So I care so much about them individually, those CEOs and those entrepreneurs, I can barely stand it. But in the meantime, they got to do all of that nurturing in their home. They have to do it for their teams and their organization as a whole. And so if we can figure out that little combo, they're going to make way more money. Companies that do that make way more money and their marriages are amazing. And isn't that what you want at the end? You want that kind of profitability where you're not just a bottom line profit, which we are all about, by the way. It's all about richness of life, richness of relationships, and changing the legacy of so many families that they come from.
So I love that. So at what point did your business scale from or transition or morph from serving individuals to starting to serve teams?
Yeah, well, it was one client. So I was coaching a client in Ellensburg, Washington, which isn't too far from you, actually. And I was his coach. And then do you remember, or maybe you don't, but so, the docks, I can't remember, the whole shipping thing, I can't remember the word I'm looking for, shut down. And what is it called? Come on, help me.
Port of Seattle there?
Yes, the Port of Seattle. I'm like, what is, I see it.
Yeah.
The Port of Seattle went on strike, and that was, a majority of his business. And it was right at this perfect time where he was going, that happened, and they were going from like literally Excel worksheets to Oracle. So it was in a cowboy town, right? So I went in and he said, I took him through. So my magic is using assessments in a way that we really get results. So I was going over what's talent insight. So his motivators and his behaviors, we call the DIS, driving forces. And he goes, you have to come do this with my staff. I need this. And so I remember because it was on my birthday, March 19th, I went in 2003 and did it with his organization. And the whole team sat there and goes, you got to come do this right, like next week with our organization. And so that started my corporate career. So then I sat in on all the executive meetings, the ELTs. I didn't know what a P&L was. I did not know what a balance sheet was. I knew nothing. And I just sat there and listened with my little innocent ear and asked really good questions. And I was in that room on basically the leadership team for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And it launched them. I mean, I love when he gives me testimonials because it's so rewarding. And then I started working with other companies. And then in 2005, I found Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and that launched me. Like all I did was use his stuff, who I love him. And I've been doing 5 Dysfunctions of a Team for 15 years with hundreds of teams. And I still would do the same thing. I'm always wanting to improve my craft, but it always comes back to, you got to do these assessments, everybody, and you have to do 5 Dysfunctions of a Team with your leadership team. I try not to do it, and every time they go, I'm like, okay, and guess what? We end up doing the exact same thing because it's all about health in an organization, and I get hired to help people grow. And what they end up needing is, if you want to grow, we got to get healthy. And no one's buying health. Let me just tell you right now. Right? Like they're like, that's not anything on their radar. But when we explain to them, this is going to cost, you got to talk in dollars a lot. And it's just thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of dollars that are wasted and you never saw it leave. I mean, do you find that too? Like, what is your experience of seeing that?
Yeah, I mean, I learned early on when I was running my own companies and then started investing in early stage companies that the interpersonal relationships of those teams is often what results in the relational conflict, either direct, like flame out, everybody's yelling at each other, or what's also quite common is just the indirect,
Yeah.
slow death of communication that leads to operational inefficiency and the death of the company.
Yeah, no, you're right. I call it the silent erosion.
Yeah.
Like, and it happens sometimes extremely fast, which is super frustrating for people. And I, when I go into organizations too, the same thing. I don't care if it's a startup with 5 or 6 people to, I work with third, fourth, and fifth generations, and I use the same concepts for both, right? And for $500 million company or $1 million company, I'm going to use the same thing. And that's really cool, by the way, because these guys can grow fast when you're, giving them these guys, this is what they want. They want a third, fourth, fifth generation company. Well, you got to do certain things. But in that, what I find is that trust, I tell them always, is every day in every relationship you have is growing or eroding. It never stays still. It is not static.
Mm.
Even today, Will, I have such a high level of trust, and our trust will grow today,
Mm.
and if I don't see you for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we'll have to pick back up.
Mm.
It's just one of those things, and that's beautiful. And that's why having a solid foundation of trust allows you to have so much more freedom in relationships, but it takes work.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about these assessments.
Yeah.
What for those people listening in? First of all, what is your company name so people can look you up?
Oh yeah, ShandelGroup.com. And I know my name is Shandel, but that is not the namesake of the company. So I want to tell you really quick about what it
Yeah.
is. I was Julie Ann for the first 2 days of my life, and my dad passed away 5 years ago, but it's his birthday today. So it's very appropriate that I'm telling this story.
Mm.
That I was Julie Ann for the first 2 days of my life, but my dad left the hospital and went into this field and saw this airplane. And it was just this amazing moment for him, his first child. And he marched right back to the hospital and changed my name, because a Shandel is an aerobatic maneuver. So he was watching this crop duster in the air, and it is the fastest way that an airplane can gain altitude and change direction.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, yeah, and it's an incredible move. Back in World War II, they used it all the time. We don't like to really advertise this part, but to drop bombs. So we don't really say that. So we
Yeah.
could edit that out. But no, just easy. But they go up and then they move and go in the right direction. And so that is what we do. We help people get to their next level and get going in the direction. And maybe they're going in the direction. Like, that's what I love about our little tagline, next level leadership, because whatever it is, even my level, you got to go up. And one thing you'll know about, if you've ever been like hang gliding or in an airplane or whatever, the physics of it is that you're always going to rattle it a little bit when you hit the ceiling, and then thermal, and you got to go through that little rattle to get to the next level. And so a lot of times we come in the rattling, and then we help them get up there. And then that's where we really encourage them. You got to really get some health into these organizations. And so that's the namesake of it. And want me to answer the assessment question now?
Yeah, and you probably could incorporate the drop bombs in there too. There's probably a way to just work that in. That's happening in business all the time anyway.
It's true. I
But,
drop a lot
um,
of truth bombs.
but yes, the assessments, because those listening in are just might be curious about, hey, is there anything
Oh,
we can
yeah.
do on our own? Like, what are those assessments?
Yeah.
Or can we hire somebody? Or yeah.
No, and I really am a high believer, and I really honestly don't try to. I try to work myself out of every job I ever get into coaching, because I really want people to be self-sufficient. But I think this assessment work should not be self-done. I think and don't get a $15 one off the internet, because the worst thing you can do is get one that's not accurate.
Ah.
And so the company I buy it from is they spend millions of dollars on research, and they're pretty accurate. And I just say that because otherwise I go, oh yeah, I've done that. Oh yeah, I've done disc. I've done disc 100 times, and that their life if your life has not been changed because you did the disc and motivator assessment, you're not really getting it, and now we're adding into the Enneagram. So let me tell you assessments.
Yeah.
We use what's called Talent Insight, the Trimetrics EQ. And what that's about is we use your discourse, which is your behavior. So if I'm talking with you and you take a long time to respond, I'm going to have all sorts of story about that because I fill the air with conversation until I think of the next thing I'm going to say. My husband sits there in complete silence while he processes the entire thing. So I think, oh, he doesn't care. He doesn't involve. I am angry by the time he talks, right? Until I know this about him. Oh, he needs time to process. So it takes out so much conflict because we have words. And then the most important part to me of this little assessment I do is called your driving forces. And it really tells what people are motivated by. And I think every leader has to know what motivates their people because they keep trying to throw, well, when we exit, we'll have all this money. Oh, if we just didn't. And you know what? A lot of times that is not what motivates people. And so if you can get into what motivates them, it's not difficult. If you, but you can tell, for example, if I'm going to motivate my husband, I'm not going to say, well, we could make a lot more money if we do this. You know, that doesn't even, but if I say, hey, you know what? We could help like 10 people if we would do this, he would light up and go, okay, well, tell me what to do. Because I've used his language and I am not manipulating him. I am providing an opportunity for him to be motivated by. And that's what it is. As leaders, we can't motivate anyone. I mean, I'm a motivational speaker and I can't motivate anyone, but I can create an environment of which someone can be motivated. And then EQ, it's all about what are the 5 aspects of EQ and pulling those in and getting really good at it. The number one thing I tell leaders all the time, drill, is that your number one job is to work on your self-awareness. You got to know what triggers you, what fires you up, what makes you happy, what just makes you so mad, and be very aware of it and then be able to control it. And once you do that, then you have to realize how everyone else is seeing you, right? So having that kind of, you got to understand how people, and when you walk into the room as a leader, everyone has a story about you. You can't walk across the room without everyone having a story. So are you aware of that story that's going through their head? And then, you know, from there, then how do you motivate other people? And there's, you know, how do you have empathy is part of EQ, and how do you get people to follow you? So we kind of talk about those 5 aspects of the assessment. And now I'm just digging into the Enneagram now, and that is my new boy. I got motivated by when I was up in that very room with you and Sarah there. So I'm a big advocate of this. I use it with every team. And usually, if I go into a team that is having those little before they get to the next level, there's conflict, basically. There's a lot of conflict, spoken or not. And I can pretty much in one day dig out almost half of that. I can dig out about 75% of that conflict and resolve about 50 of it by doing those assessments and having honest conversation with people who want to work. I mean, people who are already bitter, I can't help, but people who are just like, oh, we can pretty much take care of 50% of conflict in a day if people are willing to grow.
Wow.
You know, then you got to keep working on it. But the hard part is getting people to admit it's there, because it's there. Yeah.
So everyone's been a part of the organization, and I'm sure you and I have both probably been leaders that have been guilty of this. But when you're in a situation where you're not self-aware, right, where you kind of have emperor with no clothes type situation, you got all kinds of blind spots. Everybody in the room knows the stories, but you're not aware.
Yes.
How do you become aware? Like, how do you advise people to go through that process?
Yeah, well, one, I mean, I hate to say it again, but these assessments really shine a light on it, right? And usually what will happen is, I'll give you an example. So a high D is what's dominant. And these are your people who just basically say what they need to say, direct communication, self-starters, pioneering, and everything in their world, I'll give you a good way to know these people, is on fire. And if they smell smoke, it's fire, and they treat everything like a fire, including the way they communicate with people. You know, if you're a firefighter, you're gonna go, hey, how you doing? Like, hey, be careful about, you don't step on those pansies, and make sure you don't get water on the couch. You just go, you, hose, me, go. And that's how you communicate. And that's appropriate when a house is burning down.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, and this is what I tell these people, 81% of the population doesn't think or communicate that way.
Mm.
So really, actually, if you keep communicating your style, 4 out of 5 people don't get you.
Mm.
And that usually wakes them up a little bit to hear me out. And then we talk about how do you adapt? You don't have to change because what you do is perfect. Like it got you to where you are. And actually, we need more of your authentic self to get there. But you're going to have to realize that this is not on fire right now, and you need to change the way you're communicating to your team right now, or nothing will be a fire. Because if everything is a fire, then nothing is. So you lose credibility when you keep saying the same thing. So that helps a lot, actually. I mean, again, I am always assuming that when I say these things and they sound easy, this is someone who is humble, hungry, and really wants to grow. Like they want it, and they realize. If I get a narcissist, egocentric person, I can't help them, you know. And the problem is those people will say all the right words. And those are usually the people who go, oh yeah, I've done the disc before. And as soon as they say that, I'm like, okay. I just kind of go, okay. You know, and really, you know what I learned in school? The most important thing I learned working, you asked me back in those early days, is this is the sad truth about entrepreneurs and executives. Not everyone is coachable.
Mm.
And I think you have to be really quick to figure out who's coachable and who's not. And I have to tell you this one story because you were asking me how I got my business going the earliest. I was reminded of the first person that found me on the internet. Okay. So like the very first real client, you know, that I had and it was going to be the first person to actually pay me. I had to fire her within 2 weeks and basically tell her like, hey, I just still resist. I mean, can you imagine how hard it was? I hadn't even cashed the check yet. And I literally had to make the decision. This person they're not doing this. Like, I don't know if they just want, and I confronted her and I just said, hey, I don't know that I'm the best coach for you because this, she goes, no, you're right. I'm totally resisting. I'm not changing. And that woman was with me for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
But I think as business owners, we have to be that clear on our values and our customer. And we have to be willing that our first paid customer, you got to take that chance. If it's not the right, you can't compromise. And I'm so glad I didn't.
Yeah. I mean, in my mid to late 20s, when I was starting businesses and doing all kinds of volunteer work and marriage and kids and mortgages and like all the things, coaching was an absolute lifesaver, marriage saver, lifesaver for me. Yeah. And I remember my coaches just kind of going through frameworks of here's how to organize your own life and here's how to not burn out and here's how to think about delegation, and kind of went through the whole rubric. So after your assessments, let's just maybe start on you're coaching an entrepreneur. They go through these assessments, and then what is the next number of months look like? Like how do you frame an engagement with a CEO, say?
Yeah. So, and it always depends on what they need, right? So I have to kind of see where they are. And I usually tell people, like, if I don't know anything about them, I'll just say, hey, let's be, they're usually very busy. So every other week for an hour, let's go over these assessments, maybe a little bit, maybe an hour and a half to go over, let's get you taken care of. So it's like the first quarter is a good way to look at it. Every other week for an hour. And then I find that either after maybe more, I'm just saying, like, let's just, this is the framework. Then maybe twice a month for a half hour. Right. And then maybe an hour a month after that, like, as maintenance looks like that. I mean, and yeah. So people have been with me for years, but it's usually the maintenance work looks like once a month. Let's just check in. Yeah. And those become very powerful conversations. Other people come and they got big goals and they need to go after it and they need help. So we'll meet every week. But I just don't think that's really the best. I mean, I know a lot of coaches that do that, but they're busy people, and the stuff we're asking is like really mind, it's a lot of mind work, and to get healthy, it takes a lot of energy. So I always say the stuff I do I am a simplifier. Like I try to just simplify so many things in life, but it's not easy. So it sounds like when we sit down and have a conversation, it sounds really simple. Of course, I mean, I think most people can't believe they actually pay me to say what I say because it's so obvious. But it's not obvious. Like once I say it, it's so
Oh,
obvious. But it's not when you're in the middle of it. And so it's just how do we keep things very simple so that you can be successful is how I really believe it. And it's not easy.
and I remember my first coaches telling me that I needed to stop, go on a personal retreat, which I had never done before, right? Go
Yeah.
spending, and it was, I remember doing it. It was really the first time I had taken 24 full hours,
Yep.
just myself with a journal, kind of a cabin in the woods kind of thing. And that was one, it was just really hard because it was go, 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 super, super busy. So that was almost impossible. But the first one I did, I remember was life changing. Do you advise people to go through those type of experiences, or kind of what's your typical, hey, here's what the first month needs to look like? You do these assessments, you do a retreat or something, or kind of how do you recommend people do that?
I have to say you're challenging me to think about. Yes, in an ideal situation, I might that sounds that that would be good. I also feel like sometimes when people come, they're in the middle of it.
Ah,
And to take a day would be, and I do get like, in fact, I have a client right now that's at her cabin. So yes, that happens. That happens a lot. I have one there right now. But it's really so much about what does that person need? And I think that that's the beautiful thing about coaching is like, where is this person? And so, we have like, what is their stage of their growth? How many employees do they have? We figure out what that stage of growth is and what is it that they need to let go of and what is it that they need to add in its place. And I think one of the hardest things for owners, CEOs, is what can I let go of, right? And especially when they're in fast growth, because there's a lot of tendencies, but that really comes out in your assessment work too, because you can kind of see what are you a controlling person or are you a fly by the seat of your pants person? And so what's getting in your way? Are you overthinking things? Are you trying to be a perfectionist? Or are you just running and gunning and not thinking things through and using your adrenal system, which is not your thinking brain, it's your limbic brain to make all your decisions. So there's a lot that goes into it. I think what I like to do, my main job, when it comes right down to it, I mean, I tell people I actually just listen to them talk. So the most incredible wisdom I believe is in the client. And so if I can be just this person that goes like, hey, I have 20 years of experience. I've seen it all. I've done it all. There's nothing you can tell me that is going to shock me. Believe me, believe me. And so let me know. And as they talk and what their problems are, they come up with their answers. I ask questions or challenge them. And so they know if they come up with something really stupid, that I'm going to go, okay, well, tell me more about that because that doesn't feel right to me, So tell me more so I understand. And really, it's them talking is what I get paid to do
mm,
because they know I've got them. Like
mm,
you can say whatever you need to say, and I can contain you, and I have you, and I will challenge you, and I will be the biggest truth person. Yet a lot of people get off the phone with me and are offended at first because I actually said that to them. But then they go back and go, oh my gosh, like that's really right. And they realize how much I really care about them. And I think that that is one of the trademarks of Shandel Group is that we'll say some pretty harsh things, but they never feel that harsh because people know how much we care about them. And I really think if you care about someone, you will tell them the truth. And I think that's the level of care that these entrepreneurs and executives feel from me because I don't need anything from them. When I hang up the phone, I'm going back to my life and their decisions don't affect me. They don't affect my home. They don't affect my job. Your decisions don't affect me. I care deeply, but I don't care what you do. In the sense, if you want to go jump off that cliff, go ahead. I would advise you to wear a parachute. But you don't have to take my advice because, so it's a really powerful person to have in your life.
mm.
And then once I get them on board and believing and like having their own self-awareness, so they have to be coachable. before I will ever go work with their organization. Because and I have done this, and I kick myself every time I compromise on this, where it's like the VP comes and wants me to come work with their team, and the CEOs or the HR person wants me to come. And if that head person is not bought in, I always regret my decision. So I make sure that the head person is bought in and they are coachable. And then the next thing we need to do pretty quickly is get their executive team involved. Because at the executive team, then now we all are holding each other accountable. Now we all have this language to speak of. Instead of saying you are being a complete jerk, you know what? That's your high D speaking. Are you sure it's on fire? Because you're being very straight, and we're able to have conversations that are about a piece of this person and maybe a blind spot they have that we've all identified and all using the same language, versus you as a person are just a big jerk. And that's the coolest part that I see what happens for these guys when I say, hey, 4 out of 5 people don't understand what you're saying. And the greatest part is when I get their team together, people are like, oh, okay, you just think this is on fire, and I think it's my next task I'm going to do next week. So now we're able to bridge some serious communication gaps. And that's really what my job is. My job is really about trust and communication, and in order to get there, we have all sorts of processes of how we get there. The next level, once I got the executive team now communicating and building trust. I would never do this if, I can't do the number one thing you have to do if people are not willing to communicate wisely and trust each other. Because the next step is then we got to go after what is your purpose, vision, mission, values. Because you really can only have deep conversations like that when there's an amount of trust, or we're just going to do what the CEO says. And so I'm making sure I have a lot of trust before then we go after the most important piece of how we're going to get healthy.
So I want to dive into purpose, values, vision, mission things. But maybe before we get there, let's talk a little bit about 5 dysfunctions of a team, right?
Yes.
You do the assessments, you kind of get a common language, you kind of identify blind spots in an executive team. Can you maybe just walk through, because for those that haven't read the book, first of all, I'll link to it. You definitely need to read it if you're listening or watching this. But for those who are not familiar, can you kind of just walk us through it?
Yeah. So Patrick Lencinoi, who I love, I read all his books and I love his stuff. In fact, I could be a table group consultant because I'm so versed in his things. Is the bottom, he's saying that there's a lot of ways to grow a team, but for sure this is going to destroy it. And so that's why he talks about the dysfunctions. Right. And so the bottom of if you really want to destroy your team is have an absence of trust. Yeah. And so that goes, let me tell you what the functional parts is, and then I'll explain it because I think it helps. Trust, conflict, communication, accountability, results. Right. So everyone hires me. Guess why everyone wants Shandel Group to come work with them? We need more accountability in this organization, and we got to reach our goals. We have they all want accountability and results. And I always just go, oh, we can get there. But we're going to do this work. This is the order that it goes in. And they don't really like that bottom part, right? So that's why I love the triangle so much, because you don't get the top of the iceberg without getting the bottom. And so his basic is that teams need to trust each other. When we talk about trust, we're talking about vulnerability, like being vulnerable. Like, hey, I'm not good at that. Hey, I messed up on that. I can't believe I said that. Like, I'm going to take responsibility for it. But also really having the back of your team. Like, we spend a lot of time talking about, what happens when you gossip about people? What happens when you don't deal with, little tiny issues individually? And building that trust, you can't have the next level, which is really healthy conflict. When I do this with teams, let me just back up. I always go back to trust. I go, what's under this, holding this whole triangle up is you have to have communication. Because what I find destroys trust is, with good meaning people, I'll just say that, is 99% of reasons trust breaks down is because of miscommunication. because I say, oh, I'm going to get that to you. And you hear, I'm going to get that for you right now. And I'm saying, I'll get that for you next week. And so trust you don't feel like I had your back, that I'm going to following my word and all these things. And I feel like I am absolutely executing perfectly. And so miscommunication causes trust, because the next time you give me a project, you don't trust I'm going to get it done. So really, most trust breaks down because communication isn't clear, either how we start or where we're going. So trust, then, if we do not have we have an absence of trust, then we have an avoidance of conflict. And so what we're aiming for is what I call healthy conflict, is where we don't see eye to eye on something, either because I don't have enough information, or we just have differing perspectives, and we get in there and we work it out until we are on the same path. And so teams that don't trust each other, or they feel like, gosh, I don't think that's safe, they will not have that. They'll just go, yeah, sounds good. Yeah, great. And then what you have is you have a lack of commitment. So you have absence of trust. You're going to avoid conflict. And then you're going to have an absolute lack of commitment, where everyone leaves the office, or now we have the Zoom call, and gets on the phone and says, can you even believe we're doing that? It used to be by the water cooler, where you'd go, I don't agree with anything about that. Or how are we even going to do that? All of the conversation that should have been happening in the room so we could get the best result happens, oddly enough, with the one or two people you actually trust in the organization. So that is what we have to absolutely obliterate in an executive team. We cannot have that. Those conversations must happen in the room. And so the commitment is really cool, because people don't, we kind of go with commitment that if your voice isn't heard, you're probably not bought in. And so we are all for getting the voice out, even though you may not get a vote in it. And so that's what happens. In fact, one of the, when I was explaining this to a huge team out in Wenatchee, actually, in your neck of the woods, it was fantastic, because this person said to me, yeah, I don't always agree with the leader's decision, but I trust him explicitly. So I don't agree, but his reasoning, he told me why, he gave me his reasonings, and I don't completely agree, but I absolutely get behind him because I trust him. That's what I'm talking about. And everyone leaves that room. That senior leadership leaves the room as a we. And then you have accountability. Then you got to really hold each other accountability. So that absence of accountability, or lack of it, that's where we got to hold each other to these behaviors, that we deal with conflict, and then we go and get results. And so what happens in a lot of organizations is that everyone's going after their own result. They want to get their resume up. They want to make sure their department, they want to make sure their individual department or their career goals are met. They are watching their back. And so they're working harder than anyone else, but they are not working together on the team. And even I find young CEOs and young entrepreneurs, they're doing the same thing. They're working on their goals instead of getting a team of people to right down here in the trust, really deal and have good conflict, so that they're not off just running and going after their goal and no one's behind them. And that's what I find really sad, especially about young leaders, is that they got all the gusto in the world and they think everybody's with them and their idea is amazing and no one is telling them the truth. And that is where I will see that silent. And guess why everyone says they leave the organization? Well, these people called and I can make more money if I go work with them. Never believe it. You have done something wrong. Yeah. Like, not all the time, but pretty much if someone quits with, well, someone called and offered me more money and I feel like there's a better opportunity, you better, every single time, I'm not saying you're guilty every time, but there is something wrong in the organization.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard the old adage that people don't leave organizations, they leave people.
That's exactly right. Yep. So it's a big thing.
Yeah, it is a big thing. And it's not talked about enough. Just at all. I mean, in the startup world, startup communities, it's just so much bravado and fake it till you make it. And, in the last 10 years, there's been a number of books and a number of people talking about mental health for founders,
Yeah.
and kind of approaching it from that angle. And I'm sure that that's, in a whole person context, as you're getting to know people. And
Yes.
obviously, as you know, people are extraordinarily complex.
Yes.
And so there are probably, and I'm sure there are people listening who are now feeling very convicted. And
I love you. I want to pat you and hold you. It's okay.
and their life may be a mess, their teams may be a mess. What for just those people right now, what would you say besides you love them and you want to pat them on the
I
back?
would look at them right in the eye and say, you are not alone.
Mm,
You have what it takes. You're not, you are, this is not an accident. This is what happens. Like, this is part of your growth, but you have got to humble yourself so that you can deal with it and so you can go, because you really do have what it takes to accomplish everything that you were meant to accomplish. And you have blind spots, and those blind spots must be illuminated. And so if you will just humble yourself, and you will realize that you can't do it on your own, and you were never meant to do it on your own, you can have all of your dreams and more.
mm,
That's what I say.
word, good word.
Yeah. And they need to start right now. You know, they need to start right now, because we want you, like, I think our heart, and my partner Alan, and Scott, and all the guys, and all of us at Shandel Group, like, we want you to grow.
Mm,
We want your company to grow. Like, we love it more than anything else, but you must get healthy in order to do so. And because there's two ways to grow a company. You can grow it in a healthy, sustainable way where I'll use your wonderful words that I love, that help humans flourish, starting with yourself. Or you can grow really fast and get short-term results, and they don't last. The fruit is not even worth it in the end. If you make a lot of money, who cares? If you've hurt people, if you've ruined your marriages, if you do all these things, at the end of the road, I've just seen it. And that's what I want to kind of say, like, listen to Mama Shawnee. Like, first of all, from 13 to 30, I watched what happened in an entrepreneur home. I was a victim of it, and I saw it, and it doesn't end well. Okay, you know who ended well? My mom, who was the victim of that. She's great.
mm,
My dad was a mess the whole second half of his life,
mm,
and we were all trying to just kind of take care of him. And I love my dad. I would not speak disrespectfully, but he knows that. He ended up living with my grandma
yeah,
at the end of the days, and then in a trailer. But he was a high flying entrepreneur in 30s and 40s, right? So I know how this ends. And the second piece is, in the 20 years that I have then been helping these people, there is so much for you to give. And there's so much goodness that, why don't we go do that? And just enjoy your life while you're adding something amazing to the world.
it's really good. It's really good. So I want to take this maybe one level deeper.
Okay.
And
I love you.
why? So you say that miscommunication happens.
Yeah.
99.9% miscommunication, lack of communication. But let's let it's sort of the five, the trail of asking why.
Yeah.
Why do you think that happens? Why do you think miscommunication creeps in? And I think you talked about the different wirings and the way that people, the motivators, and all those different things. Maybe flesh that out a little bit. So those of us that are constantly trying to work on this can identify those problems maybe a little bit easier.
Yeah, I really do think it's what we said before. There's just a lack of self-awareness. I mean, I was horrified when I realized, like, not everyone wants to have fun and talk at work. Like, why? That is like why I go. Like, why work if you can't have fun and talk and communicate? And then there's a whole group of people that hate that. And so, just my own awareness of how I like to do things isn't the way the world works. It was helpful. So There's one. And then I think there is a lot of the assuming. We assume a lot of things if we're not talking them out.
Mm.
And one of the foundation frameworks I use is this power of the story and what's going on in your brain, and the art of getting your story and everyone else's story out in the open so that we can create a real powerful meaning of what's happening. So my deep dive into that is, you've got your story and someone else has their story, and you don't know what their story is, and you're assuming it's your story, you know. And I think one of the biggest places where we fill in people's story is silence.
Mm.
So when you don't say anything, you are saying a lot, because guess who's writing in all of the story is their story in your silence. So silence, if you think, oh, I'm just not going to say anything, well, okay. And everyone else is going to be saying it for you. So there's a lot of that too. So there's a lot that goes into miscommunication. And then I think really at the core of it, we have different values.
Mm.
And so, and we don't challenge our values, you know? So if we don't challenge our thinking and challenge our values, and I don't necessarily think you have to change your values. In fact, I'm very much to, you know, keeping your core values very close and at hand, but you have to be open to hearing that someone else sees the world differently, and what could you learn from that to be more understanding. And that creates a lot of it. In fact, that assessment I was telling you about, the motivators or driving forces portion of it, that is where all conflict, interpersonal conflict happens. Like if if I went onto a team and I had those reports, I would go, I'm going to ask this, and this question, because they're totally opposite. And a good example of that is my husband's a dentist, and so it is all about the art of dentistry, which I don't even get that, because this is my lowest. So his highest is my lowest, right? And so he is working on someone's back molar, and they can't even see their tooth, and he will like throw the whole thing away if it doesn't match the other teeth.
Mm.
And I think that is the most ridiculous thing ever. Like, I think, honey, they can't even see it, and it's one shade off, and they'll never see it. He goes, no, I can't do it. I just can't have my name on that. And so, you know, me being the money person, that doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I mean, if the person could see it, I'd be okay. No one can see it but the next dentist, right? And so we would have conflict over that deeply if I didn't understand that his love of doing this is the art of it. And I just have to let it go. And I don't agree with it. I don't appreciate it. I don't even think it's good. Even as I'm telling you the story, I still think it's ridiculous. And I value him, and that's super important to him, and that I'll just eat the $1,800. Does that make sense? Because that's important to him. That is a great example, is how we could go out at that day and night. But that's important to him, and it's his deal. So I'm supportive of it and kind of think it's cute now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So many questions in my head, but where I want to go is, so you talked about purpose, values, vision, mission.
Mm-hmm.
Talk us through that a little bit. So I'm assuming at this point now you're coaching executives. You've talked through all that, the assessments. You kind of got them on a rhythm. You're working through the 5 dysfunction issues. Now I'm curious. What are those 4 things, and how do you talk about them with teams?
Yeah. Well, this is where my passion really shows up. So we do all that pre-work so we can do a good job at this, you know. And if we can get the purpose and values straight and correct and on board, we can do anything, right? So the purpose of an organization is the why. And a lot of these things, I have to do my caveat first. A lot of these things, like, oh yeah, we have a mission. Oh yeah, I got that. Oh yeah, they're on the wall, you know. And I always go back to, well, Enron had them on the wall. Like, I always will throw that at people, you know. A lot of integrity and honesty. And so what these are, not even, I almost don't want people to put them on the wall, almost just so that it's so real, that it's so authentic, that it's them. So the purpose is the why, and it provides the reason your organization exists. And the why is super important. And when helping people come up, like, and really a purpose isn't something you have to go invent. You got to discover it, right? Because it is there. And so you kind of, one of the best questions if you're working with a founder is ask them, well, why did you start this? What was it that had you start this thing? And like for me, it was, I told you my story. I was working with all these entrepreneurs who were just making a disaster of their life, like not only their personal life, but it was a mess, even though they had some level of success. And so my heart just went out to them as I shared with my story. And so my purpose of starting True Life Coaching back then was about, I've got to help these people have a fulfilled life. Like, they need to find their purpose and live their life. And that was why we started. And so every person that comes to work, I want them to really care about the life of this person, their holistic life, and really care about them. And then my personal purpose is I want to help people find their purpose. Like, there is some joy in it that I can't even explain. Is it when people identify their gifts? So using those assessments I told you about, so much of that leads to them finding, oh, this is my calling. Oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Oh, I fit in perfectly. And what I find is that people try to make it really like esoteric and huge. Like, I have got to get on the moon and do something. It's nothing like that. It's always something very simple that's right in front of you. And like our dental practice, we genuinely care. And that's how my husband and I are. Like, we just really care. And you see it everywhere. And if we hire people I'm going on the next level about hiring. You got to hire people that love that purpose and goes, man, that feels like something that really touches me. I'm part of that. So like when we genuinely care. We always tell when we're interviewing, like, we actually really care about you as employees more than anything else. And we want you to make sure that you care for each other and for our patients. And we'll ask them questions about how they care for people and really start understanding, because they don't last long. If they don't genuinely care, we're pretty irritated at them. And they're pretty irritated at us because we're making them care, right? So you don't want any of that. So that's why the purpose is key, because you got to have people that all are there for the same reason. Their why fits into your why somehow, some way. And then adding on that, you add on values. And this is kind of the agreement of how we're going to behave in a sense. And so there are these fundamental beliefs and guidelines to kind of motivate us and show us what we should do. And so really it's a way we make decisions. It's a filter of, once we all agree on the values, this is how we're going to treat each other. This is how you're going to get promoted. This is how you're going to get fired. You just know, if you want to get fired, just violate one of these. It's so easy. It's how we're going to just celebrate these things. And if you have a decision you have to make and no managers around, just run yourself through these and you will not get in trouble, And so as we come up with these values, they are, again, discovered because they're what's making us great. Like, they're already at play. We just have to identify what they are. And that you don't want them to be inspirational. They're not like, values should not be things you're inspiring to. Okay. Those are called goals. Okay. These values are what is true about us. Now, what I find often is that we have journeyed far from them. So these are our company values. And guess what? We're not even living them. But this is truly who we are. So there's a lot of going back to that piece. And then when you're really clear on your purpose and your values, then let's go create the vision about where we want to go. And I put in preparing for this, I'll put our little PowerPoint on our website. Oh, so I'll give you that in your show notes and people can go look visually through it so they don't have to be writing this down. The vision is then this compelling mental image of where you want your organization to go in the future. It's like this byproduct if we do our values and purpose well. So I love our dentist one because the raw we do a little bit better, but the raw version was to stay out from underneath my husband. So to stay out from underneath Scott's drill. Right. So he's the doctor there. But that scared everyone. So we PC'd it out. But that's what it is. Like the vision is no one gets under his drill, right? Because what you want for your oral health, for example, is you just want to go get it clean. Every 6 months, get your teeth cleaned. And your chances of not being in the treatment chair is high, right? So Scott's vision, and he tells it all the time, my vision is that our patients are so educated, they don't come to the treatment rooms. That our hygiene is full because people are taking care of their teeth, right? So once you have this vision, so everybody knows our vision is that doctor doesn't work. He is just cleaning people's teeth, right? And that's very different than a lot of dental things that want, that it's all about the ROI, and they get crowns just when they only need a filling. Like his point is, I am not here to get a boat. I am here that you don't even need to see me. Right. Then, okay, so that's the vision. You're painting this vision. At Shandel Group, our vision is that every one of our clients are on the best place to work. Right. So, I don't know that will ever happen because they may not even apply, but that's their mentality. In my sector, I want to be the best place to work. So that's our vision, is that all of our clients want to win that prize. And it's a very good, it's a good test for us to know if it's an ideal client. Well, do you want to be the best place that your people would want to work? Right. And then the mission then is the how. Like this is the part that I think everyone digs into. And this is where are we in our stage of growth in our company, and what is it that we want to accomplish toward that? And so like our mission right now is we are equipping leaders for organizational health, right? Like how do we do that? We're just going to focus on that right now. Before, my mission when I was smaller and really concentrating on one-on-one was I want to help every leader with their sphere of influence, right? So it just kind of, as it grows with you in the different stage of life. For us at the dental office right now, it's that we assist our patients in achieving oral health, right? So it's like, if we're going to keep people out of our treatment chair, we got to help them with their oral health. Like we got to just educate and educate and educate. And so it becomes so exciting because that's all your people need to know. Like, and everything should be less than 7 words so that it's very easy to know. Yes.
What should be less than 7 words?
Well, each of these things. So let me try to do my best and go through our dental one, and we've really got it down. So we genuinely care. Easy. Like, you'll leave remembering that, right? Our core values, we do the right thing. We respect each other deeply, and we play as a team. Boom. And everyone can say those things, right? Easy to say. Our mission, to assist our patients in achieving oral health. And everything we do is about that, right? So there's a lot of subsets over it. But in our staff meetings, we say, okay, what are we about, right? So everyone shares stories of how we can help our patients more understand how to grow their health. We have it on our Facebook. We're helping educate people, okay? And why are we doing all of that? What are we going after? We're going after the fact that I wrote it down here, that our patients are so highly educated, motivated that they stay out of the treatment chair, right? So I like mine better of, you don't come under the drill, but no one listens to me on stuff like that because it's dramatic, but that's it. Like, look at, like, people can say that all day long and then they can make decisions that way. So there you go. Now, once we got that nailed and everyone has given me a high five, guess what? Now we break out our 5-page strategic plan. All right, let's go after, or 3 years or whatever it is. All right, we got this. Now let's plan. How are we going to go after this? And then we love the 5 to 3 year plan, the 1 year, quarter, and everything needs to flow together on that one page. That's what I love.
Wow. So the amount of pre-work before you get to the 5-page plan is massive, extremely important, and rarely done.
Yes. But when it is, though, life is so, like, It is a massive amount of work. But then your meetings, like we have meeting structures, your meetings are fun. They're short, quick, in, out, done. Great. Robust conflict. And we take out all the noise of endless emails and endless drama and talking. And like in our dental office, all women except the doctors, we have zero drama and zero gossip. It took us 5 years to get there. And like one girl started complaining and everyone said, hey, so and so is complaining. And so we went and called her into our office. Hey, you have a reputation of complaining. And so she had to stop because no one wanted to even hear her complain. I love that. Do you know how people love to come to work? When COVID hit, they all wanted to come back. Not one person said, oh, I don't know, I'm getting unemployment. Nope. Everyone was eager to get back. That's the benefit, right? That's fun.
Does Shandel Group work all around the world, or what does it look like in COVID? What is it going to look like after people start traveling again?
Well, COVID has been great for me because I get to stay home and do all of my work. And it's actually shown that I don't have to be on these planes all the time. It's fantastic. Like I've been doing 2-day leadership retreats and they are just as effective as I have been live, which has been super fun, right? So if I had sitting, I'm not a real sitter, so that's kind of hard for me. So yeah, I've worked with people on the East Coast all over. So I love my work that I do. And a lot of the West Coast. I'm up and down the West Coast a lot. It's easier travel for me. Yep. But I don't know what post-COVID. I'm so excited that to see what's going to happen because I think more than ever we are going to need clarity. I think our brains are so foggy and cloudy and we're all in survival mode and your body doesn't do well there. And so I'm kind of excited for 2021. In fact, if I can get my act together, I'm revamping, doing another version of my clarity book, focusing on what matters, I'm hoping, and really taking a whole year to get people back to getting clarity and focus. And we need to start now. Like, I think my vision is like, hey, October, and it's almost over, is the time that we start planning for 2021. And November, we got to get our act together, so I'm excited. I think if we can get November and December, have some great holiday time, family, bring it down, let's get back to normal or invent normal, then I think we can hit the ground running in 2021 and just do some really good stuff. You know what? I'm all for this whole rhetoric of let's not go back to anything. Let's go forward into some really cool stuff.
So last question for now. You probably know your industry extremely well. Coaching has become all the rage in the last 5 years or so, at least from my perspective. For those that are evaluating coaches and are thinking about hiring a coach for themselves personally or for their business, what are the things to watch out for? And who are the types of people that you want to hire?
Yeah. Well, let me do the positive first. You want to hire someone whose values line up with yours. You also want to hire someone who will tell you the truth. And you got to make sure they will and do it very kindly. You don't want, like, I've seen some coaches that are really mean, but you got to really know that they care about you and that they'll tell you the truth. I think that's a big one. And I also think staying away just from people who have big programs, and maybe that's just my thing. Like, I think you have a program, and I always tell people, like, I have programs. If you want programs, I have them. But someone who is not going to stick you in their program, we want someone who has an idea, but is going to custom make it for you because you're an individual and where you are. I would also say, like, people that know you, they care. I just can't get away that they really care about you and not that they're big money hungry. This is my program thing, but that's my personal bias. Maybe there's some good programs out there, but and if you want programs, let me tell you, I have programs. I've got 90-day programs. I've got, and I'll probably recommend one of them to you if that works for you, but I'm not going to. I want to hear where you're at before we're going to go stick you in a program.
Well, Shandel, thank you so much. This has been insightful, convicting,
What
educational.
takeaways? What are you taking away from today? That's how I end every coaching call. What are your takeaways?
Oh, that would take me a long time to explain, but I think that honestly, the takeaway for me is that there's a layers of foundation for all the things. But for those of us that are entrepreneurs, leading businesses, thinking about investors, team, vision, product, iterating the product, hiring, all the things, that foundational, it starts with ourselves, and then our marriage, and then our parenting, and
Yes.
how we're communicating with those closest to us, and how, so all the building blocks that you walk through in terms of doing assessments, identifying the blind spots, going through the 5 dysfunctions of a team, and then walking through the purpose, the values, the vision, and the mission. That's just, I mean, I'm glad we have this episode, because I'm going to watch it and listen to it again. And there's a lot of work to be done here.
Yeah.
And I love having a lot of work in front of me and just getting after it. So this is wonderful. So thank you very much, Shandel. Very, very much appreciated.
I enjoyed every moment, and I look forward to having the next set of questions. Once you get through those, then we'll give you the next phase.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you, Shandel.
All right, y'all have a good day.
All right. A couple quick things before you go. Number one, I have a general newsletter where I write about technology and startups and health science and teaching people to code. And I write about a variety of different subjects that we talk about on this show. So if you go to wclittle.com, there you'll be able to subscribe, and you'll also be able to subscribe to particular topics. If you're just interested in one or a few of them, you'll be notified right when I publish new content in those areas. Number two, my partners and I at Proto Ventures have a portfolio company called Startup Rocket. If you go to startuprocket.com, there you'll be able to receive coaching guides and customize an operations framework for you and your team and your advisors to be on the same page in terms of what is the appropriate next step for you and your entrepreneurial journey. And finally, if you wouldn't mind leaving a review anywhere that you have listened to this podcast or watched this podcast, it'd be super helpful to help those who might be interested in consuming this content as well. Thank you.